So I'm Jack Hogan. I am SHI's Vice President of Advanced Growth Technologies. I'm excited to be in front of all you here. I've been doing advanced technologies for 30 years of my career. I was a 23-year customer side CTO, and excited about all those things that allow businesses to accelerate their innovation through the use of advanced and, in this case, kind of cool technology. Let's go ahead and get into this. If my clicker would be moving me forward, would be great. Maybe not. All right, there we go. So I'm joined by Jeremy, as Ed said there. We have a great last name, Jeremy Desel. You are the Senior Director of Communications and Marketing for Bot Auto. This session's titled The Hard Part of Autonomy. So what does that really mean? We've talked about some driverless things here, but rather than me ultimately trying to describe it, I'm just going to set the scene here and show you something that I think will really make this very real for people and how advanced technology can move and accelerate very, very quickly. What you're about to see is actually not a simulated drive. It is not on a test road. This is out on the public interstates. This is Interstate 10 in West Houston. And I'll just allow this to play.
Anytime you do driverless operations on public streets, it gets exciting, right?
We all know this is only the very tiny step towards a much bigger future.
Ready to engage.
3, 2, 1, engage.
Engage success. Listen for success.
So Jeremy, what really strikes me about that is that what people in the room don't realize is your company only has 80 people and has only been in business for a little over 2 years.
Yep.
It's amazing the amount of efficiencies you've been able to gain and use advanced technology. That was a stock truck that you guys just retrofitted.
Correct.
Explain to me, how are you approaching your infrastructure decisions in terms of applying that type of autonomy to create a truly humanless drive? There was no human in that. That's pretty amazing.
Well, Jack, thanks, first of all, for the opportunity to join you and chat. And I was taken yesterday when I heard the first keynote speech from Brian, and I was completely impressed with how he laid that out. And then I went back and I looked at my notes and I said, wait a minute, that's us. That's exactly what Bot Auto has done and continues to do, taking something that traditionally had been looked at as a tech company role to develop structure, to develop autonomy, to use AI and make something drive itself. But we've flipped that on its head and are looking at ourselves, not looking at ourselves, we are not a tech company. We do really cool tech, but we're a trucking company. Because the problem that we're trying to solve isn't how do you make a truck drive itself. The problem that we're trying to solve is how do you solve for 100,000 CDL driver shortage nationally that's been a shortage for 2 decades. Well, you can help solve part of that with autonomous trucks, especially in the routes that cause that shortage to happen, which is at the end of the day, people don't want to drive trucks long haul. They don't want to spend a week away from home. They don't want to not have a family life. So if we can solve for that piece of the puzzle, now we're a business. We're not trying to put together software or a hardware stack or a sensor stack, partner with, sell it to an OEM. We're a trucking company whose focus is on one thing. That's our customer. Our customer is everywhere because it's everyone trying to ship things, and they care about only 2 things: time and money. Hence, our business model, when we dig into it and talk about it a little more, you'll see that that's all that we care about, and that's why we're here in 2 years with only $45 million in seed capital to do that, what you just saw, because we care very much about time and money.
Well, yeah, I think what is truly amazing there, I mean, you highlighted the fact that you are actually the business, you're not the technology, and you're beating out some of the technology providers that are trying to create this autonomy. You're doing it for 1/10 the price. You're doing this in an on-premises space where you've got infrastructure running, you've got edge infrastructure running, you've got hybrid infrastructure running. It's truly amazing what you guys are doing in that. But let's kind of realize that we're with an audience here that is in varied stages of where they are in their adoption to their business problems. So we have a survey here for all those in the room. If you could pull your phone out real quick, we're going to use this tool. This is called Slido. That is a highly secure QR code. It is anonymous in terms of your answers to this, but we're going to ask you this polling question and really want to understand, where is everybody running your current AI and ML workloads? Are you working in production AI environments on premises like Bot Auto? Are you in the cloud or are planning for that? Or are you hybrid, similar to where Bot Auto is? Where are you in your active evaluation? Or are you really just getting figured it out? Look at that. The poll is kind of dictating a common trend. We're creating either cloud only or you're early figuring it out. So Jeremy, if you could roll the clock back 18 months and say, where do you fit in this, and what advice would you have for those that are in that kind of top tier here, those that are just getting started? What's the biggest advice you could give?
Well, it's interesting to me when I look at the poll, if you see the smug smirk on my face, it's because if we were in that position, we wouldn't exist, right? Because we're actually, yes, we're a trucking company. Yes, we're sort of a tech company as well, but really we're a physical AI company. And without knowing what we need and what that might take, we wouldn't be here at all, let alone be here in the position we are after just 2 years with the seed capital that we've had to get us to this point. So, I would say, from Bot Auto's story and from Bot Auto's perspective, we were in that A answer, right? Like the first couple of months of our company, and our company, it should be noted, is not starting from scratch. The majority of our engineering staff has deep experience in both autonomy and autonomous trucking, and have learned some very hard lessons at other companies and other places. But that allowed us really to do that, look at the problem differently and what are we trying to solve, right? So we were at A. At the beginning of the company, the first 2-3 months or so of the company, that answer was cloud. That's going to be most cost effective. That's going to do what we need it to do, give us access to computing power and those sorts of things. But we rapidly discovered that that was untenable for us for a couple of reasons. One, the kind of computing power that we need, and certainly needed at the beginning when we were building out our foundation model, is the kind that's the costliest and the hardest to book if you're trying to get it on the cloud. And for us, a 6-week delay in getting to a time frame when we could do the computing tasks that we need is a deal killer. It's a company killer for us because we have to do these tasks now. So again, it's time versus money. So that led us to trying to find those other solutions, talk to NVIDIA, and SHI helped kind of architect and put us together with NVIDIA, and we became the first US customer that had the B200s delivered to us, and that exponentially expands your abilities and your power. But we've now found a balance where we can continue to do the tasks that we need on-prem and let the cloud do some of our other tasks that don't need the kind of heavy computing power, but still need to be done, and use it when we need it and continue to grow.
Yeah, I think it's truly amazing. I mean, so you're 80 people. Your competition like Aurora, Kodiak, they have thousands. They have hundreds of millions of dollars of budget, and this is we're talking about infrastructure, but it's actually you're solving the business problem by applying infrastructure, by starting. But I liked what you said there is by starting with what you're trying to achieve from a business outcome first. So I think that's really what you're doing differently. But you mentioned your training models. You're doing this in a much more efficient way by doing your training and then leveraging kind of edge inferencing. You mentioned to me that you're also putting GPUs actually in the trucks. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me how all these systems are kind of operating together, how that training's working, how you're taking the efficiencies of the B200s, the Blackwell series, and then applying that to the edge?
Well, you have to approach what we do as almost two independent systems, right? So the trucks themselves, I mentioned a minute ago, one of the things that's become very important to us is, and we discovered right away, everyone else in the autonomy space has formal, more than handshake, but contractual deals with the OEMs, with the manufacturers of the vehicles in a partnership mode, because their business models that were developed 8-9 years ago, well before the technology shift occurred with LLMs and GPUs and all of those things, was to build the technology to sell it to the OEMs so that the OEMs could then resell it to whomever they were going to resell it to. What they missed in that process and are now having to pivot and adjust to there is the fact that if you're selling a major trucking company, let's say, an autonomous truck, but the trucking company doesn't have the infrastructure or the people or the knowledge to maintain sensors, to do maintenance on those vehicles, to do any of those tasks, but you're being asked to spend an extra $200,000 for a truck, you've exponentially increased your cost, and what's the business case there, right? So from our perspective, we're injecting ourselves to change the existing ecosystem of logistics by putting ourselves in the middle mile, which is this problem we're trying to solve, and doing it as best we can. To do that, we have independent systems where the truck itself, we go to Houston Freightliner. We're based in Houston, Texas, where Texas is the ground zero of all autonomous trucking research because Texas is very far ahead in its regulation, and we don't need anybody's permission to be out there on the roads. When we did that test that you saw, we notified the Department of Public Safety, we notified DOT. They knew everything was going to happen. They didn't necessarily know when, but they know that they're out there. So moving through all of those different pieces of the puzzle, we, technologically speaking, have to have an independent vehicle, which we go buy from Houston Freightliner. If you looked at our truck, you would think it was any other long-haul truck because it's got the extended cab that looks like a sleeper, as you probably saw in the video. Well, the trick is all the sleeper's torn out. And in the place of that, not coincidentally, directly behind where the human driver would sit, is the computer stack, is the tech stack. And then there's a couple of other jump seats there for research purposes and all of that. But that's where it's all kind of built in. And that's built from scratch, essentially. Yes, we get the GPU chips, but the server itself and how all those systems work is proprietary, and we've built that piece of the puzzle. But it has to talk back to the main engineered piece, which most of ours is in a on-premises but shared data center where SHI just built us our stack, essentially, came to our site, installed, did all of that work. Because very much, I mentioned before time and money, right, being the motivators of the company. That includes all of those little things, like a data center. Why build one when you don't necessarily need one that large now, and you can work in a co-located data center, and it's perfectly good? Why build a shipping hub that's going to cost you $20 million that may have that exact infrastructure you need to offload data and do those things, when you can go to a co-located facility that's already there, pay $350 a month for the parking spaces instead of $20 million for the hub, knowing that the whole goal is to exponentially expand, both in the systems and in how you deliver that product.
Well, I'd say, I mean, obviously you're very closely tied into this with NVIDIA. They did a recent social post about you. That doesn't come by accident. They usually really look at advanced companies that are rapidly accelerating things, and I love the fact that you are a trucking company applying technology in that. But let's kind of let's go into the details of how this stuff that didn't make the press releases. Walk us through, ultimately, how are you doing this continuous model training? How are you using your business advantage of being in that middle mile, that critical phase of moving logistics? I mean, you're affecting nearly everyone in this room.
Ideally,
logistics and moving that middle mile are critical. But kind of walk me through how you're applying your business outcome to how you're putting that into your tech stack, and kind of explain how that's really the details of that.
I mean, I think that very much applies to the heart of what we're getting to here, because in order to do what our truck does, you have to take a step back in both the timing piece of how we've gotten to where we are so quickly and how all of those pieces of the puzzle are put together. So our tech stack, our autonomy stack, includes 18 cameras, 5 LiDAR, and 3 radar systems that, as you can imagine, creates an enormous amount of data. Any one of our runs is significant amounts of data that we have to process. But every one of those runs, whether we're doing it with paid cargo, whether we're doing that fully autonomously, or whether we're doing it with a human CDL driver, is doing the work that we have to do anyway to educate the models, to do all of the map building, to do all of the tasks that it takes, but getting paid at least by someone to do that expansion and to do that testing, right? So when it comes to doing the model training and the foundation model development, foundation model came first, requires a huge amount of that computing power to get it built and get it moving. Now we're almost in a, maintaining that mode, but constantly training that model with every run and everything we make. And that training isn't just from the physical truck runs that are out there. Much of it is done with simulations. And that gets back to your point of how do you do it with just 80 people, right? There are some of these bigger companies, because they've had to essentially jury-rig their structure on how they're going to build things, because they're on version 3.0 of their systems and their hardware, because they didn't have GPUs. They didn't have large language models. They didn't have those things that we started with to be able to just accelerate that process naturally with the help of the technology. But a company like Aurora, who's very well known with thousands of employees, they have 100, 150 maybe people whose sole job is map training. We have one. And the rest of it is automation. So the more we can automate, which requires that hardware and that computing power, that's how we are where we are, by automating every last step that we can.
Yeah, I love a couple things that you said in there, because it's really important. This is the approach that SHI takes with our customers to really kind of imagine what it is you can apply your AI to your business, and then kind of experiment through that and continuously learn, and then adopt, in this case, a platform. And I think that there's we've talked about some infrastructure, but more the platform play here, kind of bringing this down to the NVIDIA AI enterprise stack, leveraging that across all of those environments, your edge deployments, your data center and core, and of course your expansion into cloud, all of that. So, is that what is your competitive mode? Is that you've developed this around a platform that's really allowed you to be flexible and use the business model first, iterate through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes back to those same two words that are the only two words that are important to our customers, and that's time and money. And that's the way it works for us in every little piece of the puzzle, right? Like when we're considering how we're going to equip a location where one of our trucks is going to be using it as a hub, we have to consider, what do we want to put there to lower the latency and the time out of cycle that the truck has to be, because at the end of every run, we have to offload that data and then upload that data back to the main systems. That takes time. And granted, our solution is, okay, we'll go unplug the unit from the truck, plug in another one, and then deal with the data. But you still have to have the physical ability to get that data from point A to point B in these hubs, right? But for us, the reason that it's formulaic and has to be is because our goal is to be that trucking company. But what that means is we will never stop building new operational design domains until they stop building roads, until they stop having customers who need to get things to certain locations. And that's the way it progresses. Right now, we're focused on Houston to San Antonio. That's what we do. That's our domain. However, we are also right now expanding that domain by building out the maps and the modeling from San Antonio to Laredo, Texas. You may wonder why Laredo, Texas. That's because that's where all your produce comes from. And we happen to have an agreement as one of our customers with a company called Cisco Foods, who you probably ate some of their products this morning. And produce is very important to them, and latency to them doesn't mean data loss, it means spoiled bananas. And so if we can help them with that, that's their version of that same problem that we face with data latency.
Well, yeah, listen, I think that the business challenges that you're solving there, like spoiled bananas, is really important. As we kind of come to a conclusion here, I would love for you to kind of explain to everyone, how did SHI help you through this process? How did we provide value to you? How did we help you make the decisions along this journey?
So again, it comes back to those same two words. I hate to pound the drum on it, but time and money, right? When you're a team of 80 people and your IT infrastructure staff is 6 people, and you know that you want the latest and greatest NVIDIA systems and chips, but call NVIDIA and NVIDIA says, hey, you need to call somebody to help you get it. We're not a huge capital company. Like our capital investment in our servers is what, $5-10 million, somewhere in there. We're not a big fish, but SHI allowed us to be. And without SHI working that magic, building that stack, doing those tasks that it's more cost effective for us to have you do. That's why we're here today having this conversation.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you. This has been incredibly valuable, hopefully for everyone in the room, to see how these amazing advancements of applying AI and applying advanced solutioning, leveraging the partners, the partnership that we bring, that value added, the added amount of information, the relationships we can bring to companies like NVIDIA. These are the reasons that you're beating your 10 times, maybe in some cases 20, 30 times size competitors to full human. So for those that are in the room that want to learn a little bit more about how SHI can help your company, how we can bring our Imagine, Experiment, and Adopt process to you, this is a QR code that you can use. But I also encourage you, speak to your account representative that's brought you here, and we can help you identify those business challenges and apply AI and put IT into the driver's seat of your breakthrough technology that you can bring to your companies. Thank you all for coming. And Jeremy, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.